You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today, man, we have a big powerhouse today. We have a true honor talking to the one and only Deborah Archer. She is the president of the ACLU, and we're going to be talking about her new book, Dividing Lines, How Transportation Infrastructure Reinforces Racial Inequality. First and foremost, good morning. I know your schedule's tight, so how are you doing?
Good morning. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for making time for me.
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate you talking about this important topic. First and foremost, what inspires you to start researching and putting this book together? Because it's very well put together.
Thank you. So I've been a civil rights attorney for 30 years, and central to my work has been challenging the inequality at the intersection of race and space. I think about all the ways that we have used tools to segregate and oppress Black communities and other communities of color. And what's been missing from this conversation is the way that we have used physical tools like transportation infrastructure to create these dividing lines that segregate, separate, and oppress our communities.
You say that we can't fix our infrastructure without addressing its racist past. In the book, kind of give us a teaser how you tackle that point.
I think it's important for us to understand the full nature of transportation. Transportation in America is a bit of a paradox. We often think of roads and highways and public transit as symbols of progress and connection. But the story I try to tell in Dividing Lines is about how these same systems have been used as tools of exclusion and displacement, especially in Black communities. So one example is, that transportation, of course, has long been a tool for enforcing white supremacy. But as legal segregation began to crumble during the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, cities across America started turning to our highways and roads and transit systems that were being built up and fortified as a more permanent, more visible way to enforce racial hierarchy. And I try to take readers through the way we've done that with our highways, with our roads and street grids, with our transit system, and even with our pedestrian infrastructure, sidewalks.
And also in the book, you use examples from cities like Atlanta, Houston, and New York. What are some of the patterns, if you saw any common patterns or common threads of what you saw were some issues?
There's lots of common threads, and this is not a story just about the South. This is a story about basically every state in the country that did this. So one example was after Brown versus Board of Education was passed in 1954, adopted by the Supreme Court, and said that segregation in public education was illegal. We saw that communities that saw Brown as a sign that segregation more broadly was going to fall wanted to find new tools, and they turned to the highways as one way to lock it in segregation. So in Birmingham, Alabama, I talk about the way that they had racial zoning laws, and when they had to get rid of their racial zoning laws, the highways in many places were built on the same exact boundaries. Similarly, in Atlanta, I-20 was built on mirroring some of the racial zoning boundaries. And I also talk about the way some of the highways around the country, including in Indianapolis, mirror the redlining maps. Redlining destroyed Black and brown communities through underinvestment, and by telling people that there was no reason to invest in them. You couldn't get mortgages, you couldn't get loans for your businesses. And then we use that economic deprivation and the result of it to target those communities to be destroyed and removed by highways.
Once again, talking to the one and only Deborah Archer and her new book that you can get right now, Dividing Lines, How Transportation Infrastructure Reinforces Racial Inequality. My next question would be, hopeful for the future, what would you see would have to take place in order for improvement for our transportation systems, and how can we take those steps?
Yeah, I think we need some fundamental shifts in how we view the relationship between transportation and Black and brown communities, and recognizing how important transportation is to connecting us to opportunity for being the infrastructure for good health and happiness. And so I think we need to focus on an anti-racist design or community equity focused, whatever it means, to make sure that Black and brown communities are not housing all of the negatives of our transportation infrastructure, the isolation, the devastation, the pollution, but allowed to enjoy fewer of the benefits. And in writing the book, I visited communities all around the country, including with some folks in San Antonio and other communities throughout the South. And what is beautiful and inspiring is the way that they have spent decades supporting and building their communities in the shadow of these infrastructure projects that displaced and destroyed so many beautiful aspects of those communities, and they're fighting using every tool that they have. And I think it's important for us to join those communities in the fight to make sure that we are building back better for everyone, that we are reconnecting those communities, and that we are providing for economic investment in those communities.
Every person has their own unique opinion on this issue. But when we talk about accountability and leadership, what roles do you see our leaders having opportunity to take place if they want to address this?
Yeah, I think most importantly, they need to understand this history and make sure that as we move forward, racial equity, racial justice, and not further destroying Black and brown communities is central to the decision-making process, that they have a responsibility to ensure that the most marginalized communities have a seat at the table, that their houses, their homes, their communities, and their lives are valued in the same way that other lives, communities, and homes are valued. We have a responsibility, our leaders have a responsibility to make sure that Black and brown communities, their transportation system is modernized, that they have investment in transportation. We focus on often trying to build 21st century transportation for this country when we really haven't brought everyone up to the same point yet. So before we all can move forward together to a brighter future, we have to make sure that we're all at an equal starting point, and that's the responsibility of our leaders.
And one last question for you. After readers finish reading the book, what would you say will be the responsibilities for individuals in their own community, how they can get involved?
Well, I think that that's just it. We all have a responsibility to get involved. I have a friend who often says that we all can be a part of the circle of human concern. And I hope that people will read this book and recognize all of us have a responsibility to be better, to do differently, to build our transportation infrastructure in a way that really supports the health, economic opportunity, and vitality of every community. I hope that we can also see and celebrate the strength in these communities that have been historically targeted, and the strength that they've showed and the resilience they've showed in the fight that they have showed.
Once again, I've been talking to Deborah Archer in her book, Dividing Lines. You can get it right now. Once again, like I always want to say to you, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.